Let's turn our attention now to our students who are adults and think about the challenges that they might face and some strategies that we can use. Before we go into that, let's do a quick recap of what we've already talked about. So we started off by talking about the structure of USPA and noted that the coach rating is the first of three instructional ratings that USPA gives out. We talked about what a coach is able to do, how to earn the coach rating, as well as how to keep your coach rating. What are the renewal requirements? Then we moved on to the rules that you need to be familiar with. And so we've got some federal rules coming from the FAA. We have rules coming from USPA. These are our basic safety requirements or BSRs. And finally, you may have some state, local, or DZ rules that you also need to follow as a coach. We ended up with liability. So if you remember, liability goes hand in hand with responsibility. So if somebody gets hurt and you are responsible for them, then you may also be liable as well. So again, we're going to be turning our attention now to our students. The great thing about your students is that they are going to be motivated. Unlike children that are told that they have to go off to school, or even adults that have to do a workplace training program they're not really interested in, the people that you're going to get are motivated and want to be there. There are two types of motivation. There's intrinsic, so somebody is doing it because of the rewards that they're finding internally, whether this is they love having a challenge and maybe also the feeling of success once they finally master something, versus an extrinsic motivation, which so external factors. And in skydiving, usually what we see is that there's a person that is learning to skydive because they have a spouse, significant other, partner, what have you, that is in the sport already, and they're probably doing it for them because they want to spend more time with them. So, what are the challenges that we may have? First thing with adults is going to be life, right? Time constraints and responsibilities due to work or family, those can crop up. Their mindset. We're going to go into a little bit more about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset and what that means. And finally, I have cognitive ability. So some older students might have the mentality that, it's really difficult to teach an old dog new tricks and you have to get them to move beyond that. And then the last thing that I have is knowing whether or not your student has prior military experience or similar. So we're going to talk about those type of people. A lot of times traumatic brain injuries can have an impact on their current ability to learn. So, what are some strategies that we can use? Well, when it comes to life distractions or just distractions in general, we want to try to limit this. So, whether that is making sure that if there's any background music, that it's not too loud, there are no visual distractions around, or hopefully at least just limit the visual distractions as much as you can. And then a big one is going to be people's cell phone, right? And that's how life is going to try to intrude while they're learning. So, let students know from the beginning that phones can be checked during breaks. This is going to be particularly important when you're teaching the first jump course because it's a really long stretch of time that somebody's going to think that they won't be able to access their phone. But just let them know, hey, you can check them during breaks, and breaks are going to be pretty often. And finally, make sure that you are modeling what you want your student to see. This is going to come up in several different modules while we're learning how to train people. But even here, if you don't want people using their phone during your classroom time, make sure that you also are not checking your phone every so often. So back to a fixed versus a growth mindset. Somebody that has a fixed mindset, they're going to think that talents and their abilities are essentially unchangeable. Whatever they were born with, well, that's what they're working with. Somebody that has a growth mindset is going to think that their talents and abilities can be developed based on the amount of effort that they put forth. Fixed mindset, they avoid challenges, whereas on the opposite end, our growth mindset people, they embrace challenges. They look forward to them. Fixed mindset will tend to give up easily. I mean, they're trying to avoid a challenge to begin with, but whenever they do have a challenge, they're going to give up pretty easily, while the growth mindset, they persist when things become difficult. This is where I personally have really seen a fixed versus growth mindset come out when I'm teaching skydivers. The debrief, right? So a person that has a fixed mindset, they're going to feel that any of the feedback that you're giving them is actually just criticism. Whereas a growth mindset person, they really look forward to the debriefs because they want to see where they can improve and they really value that feedback. Finally, a fixed mindset person is going to be threatened by the success of others, whereas a growth mindset, they're going to find inspiration in the success of other people. So, what are some strategies that we can use if you're working with somebody that has a little bit more on the fixed mindset side? So, first thing is emphasize the effort that they've already put forth. And then celebrate their mistakes as learning opportunities. So, anytime that they make a mistake, this is just a time that we can learn from it and move forward. And finally, you just got to be patient because it's not easy to transition away from having a fixed mindset. This leads us to our cognitive abilities, right? I mentioned a lot of people that have a military background or perhaps maybe even law enforcement or some sort of physical jobs like that. A lot of times they have experienced a traumatic brain injury or a TBI in the past. So, how does this impact learning? They can have more numerous headaches and migraines than the average person. They can have light sensitivity and sound sensitivity, diminished attention span, trouble concentrating, as well as memory lapses. So, people that have had TBIs in the past, don't be surprised if you have to repeat yourself several times, and you might need to throw in a lot more review sessions than you would for somebody else. Next up is going to be lesson planning. So, in general, if you're given whatever topic that you're going to speak on, how do you go about putting all of that together? Thinking about what you're going to teach, as well as knowing if your student has learned what you taught.